broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hello, AfterBuzz fans, and hello, Public Morals fans. I'm Roxy Stryer, and I am just about the most excited person in the entire world right now. Other than me being excited, though, I know my panel...
Can't Tina Cap be excited?
Yeah, my whole panel is very excited. So I'm here with Christina Kaplan.
Hey, guys. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Tina Cap.
With Phil Svitek.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Excited to be here.
And the most important person that we have calling in for this very special episode, we have Edward Burns on the line, creator and star himself. We're so excited to have you. Hello.
Hey, guys. How are you?
We're doing okay.
As I told you, I'm very excited to be here as well. So.
Well, it's nice to know. Thank you so much for your support all through this season. We love that you were watching and tweeting with us, because we were certainly watching your show, and gosh, do we love it so much.
Well, thank you, and it's been a lot of fun for me to listen every week and sort of hear what you guys are digging about the show, what maybe confused you. But I have to admit, I loved all the predictions, and if we're lucky enough to get a second season, there's actually a couple of things I wrote down where I didn't even think about going in that direction, where I was like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. I should make a note of that. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so
exciting.
Any particulars of any in particular stuff that really stood out in terms of like, oh, I can't believe these guys are thinking that or saying that, or I totally never,
I remember early on, you guys made a connection between the fact that, James got in trouble at school, and the fact that Fortune claimed to be a teacher. And you guys went on a little sort of riff about what you thought I was trying to say about teachers or education or school. I thought that was interesting. I think somebody had a prediction about Rusty and his father and how that might turn out, maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Which was pretty spot on. There were a few. There were a couple of moments where I was happy that you guys sort of you clearly recognized a little bit of the pipe we laid or some of the foreshadowing we did, and then other things that I really you can be so close to the material that some things that you guys thought, whoa, that's pretty obvious that we're so close that we didn't see. So. Very informative.
It's interesting because we do a lot of over-analyzing here. So we come up with some crazy predictions, and it's nice to hear that some of them might be giving you ideas. And I know that we're here crossing our fingers for season 2. I wanted to ask you, because you already have a thought process on season 2. You came out and you talked a little bit about it, that we might be going to the Lower East Side, and we might be seeing some of my people, the Jewish gangsters. How far into planning that are you right now?
So it's interesting. When we were in the editing room, and you're living with these characters every day, all day long, and you're sort of seeing how this whole 10-hour story is laying out. Like you guys or like any fan of the show, you sort of start to fall in love with certain characters and storylines. And so while I was in the editing room, I just started mapping out season 2, and I even wrote 5 episodes. That said, we haven't officially gotten our pickup for season 2, so I decided to stop writing until I get the official word. But the interesting thing that I should tell you guys is, the last couple of scripts were a little long. So what ended up happening in the editing room is we have a full finished 11th episode. Where you see what happens between Muldoon and Rusty, and that sort of comes to, it's still a little bit of a cliffhanger, but he and I finally go toe to toe. And TNT decided to hold on to that episode to be the first episode of season 2. So if anybody was sitting there watching the episode last night saying, "Oh, I can't believe you didn't give us this or resolve that," some of those things were resolved, but now you're going to have to wait till next season.
Okay, we're kind of losing our minds in here over this right now. So you're telling me that you have an 11th episode. So the way that we saw, because of course we're now 10 episodes in, we've seen everything. We ended, and it was a kind of weird ending for this. It wasn't necessarily what I thought it would be. I really enjoyed it, but I was like, there's so many questions. You're telling me that those questions have answers already. Those answers are out there. I just can't see them yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're gonna have to wait a year or so, or whatever it is, 8 months.
A year? I honestly cannot wait a year. I told everyone about this show because first we'll have to tell you how we actually decided to do the after show. Is we all did the after show for ABC's Revenge, and we wanted to stay together as a panel, and Phil over here was like, "Oh, there's this great new show on TNT coming out called Public Morals." And I was like, "What? I've never heard of it. I had no idea." So we kind of went into it with a very blank slate. We had no idea what to expect, and we all fell in love. And we've literally, I think I speak for everyone to say that we've promoted your show so much to everyone. And my dad is obsessed. Everyone that I know, everyone that I know that has watched it just loves it. So I can't imagine that there's not going to be a second season.
Especially if you have the first episode.
Well,
that's true.
Yeah. Well, we're already, $5 million under budget on season 2.
Wow.
If you look at it that way.
Yeah, exactly. Because you already used that
Phil,
budget.
thank you for giving the heads up and getting these guys into it, because I know, you guys and doing this, I've definitely heard from people on Twitter and Facebook that I turned on to the podcast, who then turned their friends onto it, and then I started to hear from people who clearly, fans of you guys, who got wise to the show because they must have listened to what you guys did with Revenge. So,
well,
two-way street there.
We love supporting good people. I mean, that really is the spirit of AfterBuzz, and
you make it easy. It's a great show. It's easy to support, and now it will be even easier to support a season 2 when it does happen, because you wrote 5 episodes and you also already have 1 episode that's canned. So it's like you have 6 episodes already in your mind, and one of them's actually there. I can't believe that. Would you picture it being another 10 episode season if you do get picked up, or do you know how you could see that working out?
Yeah, I think ideally it would be somewhere between 10 and 13. In writing that first season, I kind of created this, a Bible of, characters and stories that I wanted to explore. Some were sort of the overarching, like season-long stories, and some were sort of the 3-episode short stories, and then there were these other sort of 1-episode vignettes. So I went into it with probably 3 seasons worth of material, and then it was just a matter of kind of, all right, let me just extract from that the stuff I'm most passionate about, my favorite stuff, and I'll start there. But it's interesting, with 10 episodes, you can lay pipe for and introduce characters that that we knew we weren't going to pay off until season 2. Like Lieutenant King's nephew. He's mentioned in the pilot. He's brought up again in episode 6, and then last night in the finale, we set up the fact that he's going to be the new member in the Public Morals office next season, and we laid a hint last night that one of the guys in the Public Morals office is on the way out. So all of that kind of stuff and everything. If you watch, when you see season 2 and you find out who gets bumped out of the office, when you go back and watch season 1, you'll see that that thread was in there, and we were sort of laying like very little subtle hints throughout the season, setting up that one guy to fall.
Let me ask you this, because I remember when I first saw the episode 1, the pilot, it was almost, for an audience member, it was relentless in the fact that the dialogue was so fast and everything was coming at you so fast, and you had to put a lot of you yourself had to put a lot of faith into the audience that they could keep up. And obviously I think they have. I certainly did, but did you ever doubt yourself in this, as you're doing that, we got to slow down certain things, we got to maybe hit them a couple more times, because like I said, that first episode was lightning fast, and in writing they also tell you, whatever your pilot is, write it as if it's episode 3 instead, so that way you're into the story. I felt like you picked episode 10 and started there.
I got a bunch of thoughts on that. I mean, one is, it's funny, the only thing I ever doubted was when I started to listen to you guys, and you were having trouble keeping the name straight, because you said they got a first name, they got a last name, they got a nickname, and I started to think, maybe I should have just given them one name that they were called by.
No, we got there though. We got there. It was more realistic.
You guys got the hang of it.
Yeah.
But the thing that I wanted to do with it was, and it's a long answer. So it's like, it had to feel authentic, and I wanted, like New Yorkers tend to talk really fast, and I wanted it to be very conversational, and I love Robert Altman films where there's a lot of overlapping dialogue, and I knew that there would be a lot of bits of dialogue that the audience would miss. Anything that had to do with let's say a more strategic plot point, I tried to make sure that was a moment where there was a breath, but there were some other things where I wanted the audience to just get it was more atmospheric dialogue than it was, I need you to catch everything that they're saying. Some of it was, hey, I'm in a room with 4 cops, they're talking about 5 different things. The things that are important, we highlighted. The other stuff that was sort of the playful banter to put you in the room were things that I was fine if you couldn't quite follow everything. So that was definitely a conscious effort on my part to make it feel authentic. The other thing about the pilot, though, which was interesting, is when we were shooting the pilot, before we shot it, you get notes from the network about certain things that they would like to have in there, which will give them the best version of what the show will be, so that they can, I guess, sell it or justify picking it up. And so there were things like, we need another sort of action set piece. So can you give us a foot chase? So you put that in there. And then there's it's a little confusing as to whether or not O'Bannon is a cop. So we put a new scene in where we see him in the precinct. And there were those types of things, like with killing Mr. O. There was, maybe we need one more scene with Mr. O so we have a little better sense of who he is. Given that we're going to kill him off, and the whole sort of the rest of that first season is going to sort of that his murder kind of triggers a lot of what goes on. So with those things, so your pilot episode, our locked version of that, and the version that got tested, and the version we got picked up off of, was probably 7 minutes longer than the one that aired.
Wow.
So then what you have to do is you have to kind of go back into that, and I was able to extract 2 scenes and figure out a way I could write them into later episodes, but that still left us maybe about 4 minutes long. So what we had to do was kind of cut out a lot of the breathing space that existed in that episode. And I think that's why you probably felt like, oh my God, this is like rapid fire. We're just getting a ton of information. I hope if we do get the second season, I'd love to go back into the pilot and restore it to the longer version and have that available to people on iTunes or on DVD.
That would be awesome. I have to say I watched almost every episode twice because I felt like there was so much that happened each time and so many different storylines. And I have to say, a lot of the times I feel like in shows when there are so many storylines and so many characters, some of the storylines kind of don't develop as well, or they don't get the attention that they really deserve. And I felt like you guys did a great job at really developing every single storyline in an interesting, unique way, giving it the attention that it needed. Was there a certain storyline? Obviously, you gotta love Terry and Christine's dynamic in the family, but was there another storyline that was probably like one of your favorites of the season?
I loved Bowman and Fortune. And what happens to them in season 2 takes a turn I don't think that folks would anticipate.
You mean Charlie and Stacy? We've got multiple names, yeah.
yeah, Charlie and Stacy. A funny thing about the fact, we call her Fortune, and nobody caught this at all in script form, but in maybe it was episode 8 when Charlie and Stacy go to dinner with Stacy's mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that scene, in the script, Stacy's mom referred to her daughter by her hooker name, Fortune. Because she's called Fortune in all the scripts. So the actress said to me, I don't know that the mom would be calling her Fortune in this scene.
That's so funny.
Given that that's her hooker name. But anyway.
That's hysterical.
But the big storyline that's one of my favorites that we kind of ran out of real estate was Bernadette's character and her relationship with Moose and Latucci. That's one that I really feel like I only got an opportunity to scratch the surface of where I'm going with that. And then Kane. I mean, that was a character that was a smaller part of the story initially, and then when I cast Aaron, who I know you guys had on the show,
he was great.
I really fell in love with him, what he was doing with the character, and really just started to, as you can tell, had a lot of fun with that Kane character. So and also, Neil McDonough's performance as Rusty, that was another favorite of mine. And given that Neil plays such a great homicidal lunatic, we started to just even have a little bit more fun with that stuff, with the strangling in the tub and then taking the slip and giving the slip to Kay. And
yeah.
So I mean, it's one of those situations you kind of, in a way, they're all your babies, so you kind of you end up falling in love with all of these storylines.
And there's only so much.
You have to, I think.
Yeah, of course. And there's only so much time to tell the story you want to tell. You talk about running out of real estate or notes from the network as you're being tested. And I'm curious because you are known for being a low budget, micro budget, no budget filmmaker. And you always kind of had to live by your own rules, and there wasn't that many people that you needed to compromise with. Now you have this show on a major network, and it's a huge success. And I want to hear a little bit about how that process was for you and what compromises you did have to make or that you didn't have to make.
This was kind of a charmed experience for all of us. I mean, to start with, Steven Spielberg, who I've known and has been, something of a mentor since Saving Private Ryan. I gave him the script, a couple of summers ago as I was getting ready to pitch it to TNT. He reads the script, and I'm hoping he'll give me some notes. Instead, he says, "Look, I love this. I want to help you get it made. Why don't we come on as executive producers?" So the minute you have Steven as an executive producer, you're pretty sort of well protected. That said, TNT is looking to pivot a little bit and move in a different direction with their network and trying to do, let's say, more serious dramas, more like we'll just do I'll just say serious dramas. And so they were nothing but supportive. I mean, really gave us full creative control. The only notes we got were very minimal, but they were also in keeping with the story I was trying to tell. I never got any notes that were trying to sort of change the course of the story or change the tone of the piece. They let me cast whoever we wanted to cast. And then most importantly, I was able to hire all of my department heads My director of photography, my costume designer, my production designer, my location scout, my editor. So I was able to work with my indie film team. And the reason I think that the show looks the way it does, it looks like a movie, it doesn't look like a TV show, is because none of us had worked in television. So we just said, okay, this is a nice big budget we have. We know how to make movies. Let's just make a 10-hour long movie and approach it that way. So really, as far as compromises, none. The only thing I had to learn how to do, which was different, was how do you write in a 5-act structure, and then how do you write towards the end of an episode? How do you create sort of the cliffhanger in order to entice the audience to show up the following week, or now, fortunately, now that it's all available on iTunes, now it's sort of like the ultimate binge experience. I think we did a good job. Like when an episode ends, you're going to say, okay, I'll watch the next one right now. So that was sort of
it seemed like for a long time it was it was just a death by Rusty.
Yeah, every episode.
That was the cliffhanger. That was your structure.
It's not okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. When does he? I guess Christine.
Yeah, her crying.
That was sort of the first episode where Rusty. It didn't end with Rusty whacking somebody.
That was a nice departure. What is that? Episode 6, correct, or 7?
No, I think it's episode. Is that Ladies' Night? No, so it must be episode 5. It's about the halfway point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that she did an amazing job. I love those more silent but moments where we see the character struggle, and that's kind of where we're left in the season finale. We have this big struggle between the people that you say it's one of your favorite storylines. It's definitely one of my favorite storylines, with Charlie and Fortune, as he looks at her, and we're thinking this whole season he might be in love with her, and he calls her a whore and walks out. I know we were all wondering, what were you thinking when you wrote that, and how did you come to that place? How did you decide that was going to be the way, and is this the last that we see of the relationship?
That line where he says, originally in the script it says, "I'm sorry, I don't sleep with whores."
Oof. That's such a tough moment.
I mean, I like those moments, and to the realness of it. It's funny because obviously the rest of my panel is all females.
Shout out to Anna Koppel for mayor, who
that's right,
who would really like to be here right now.
And I love those moments because they're such real guy moments. I mean, especially when your manhood gets tested in that way by other men, of like, hey, are you doing this? This is bad. Whether for your career or your friendship. Those are the things that you would do.
Mm-hmm. And they're constantly.
It's not what you mean by any stretch of the imagination. It's certainly that's the exact opposite of what he wants to say. He wants to say like, "Hey, let me take the day off and we'll go to the park." Mm-hmm. But
how did you feel about that ending, Christina? When he walks out on her, and we had been speculating all season.
I don't know. We have been speculating all season that they would get together or end up together, but I also kind of felt like that was too much of a low-hanging fruit for this show to have them end up happily ever after.
Right.
I like what they did. I'm glad. I like what Ed did. I'm glad that Charlie did say no to her, but I feel like this is not a hard no. I think that if there is a second season, which hopefully there will be, like we said, I think that Charlie might change his tone.
And everybody at home, just so you guys know, we will be doing a full recap of episode 9 and 10. We will be doing that tomorrow night with Brian, who plays Shay. He'll be calling in, so you definitely will get our thoughts on that.
And that's because you support our amazing sponsors, DraftKings, with the promo code BUZZ, B-U-Z-Z. And if you're wondering why we haven't talked to Ed in a bit, it's because the call got dropped. Yeah, as we know, Ed is a busy man.
We're getting back
but
to him.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
He's in New York City, so who knows what happened in that long chain.
Maybe he's gone back to the 1960s. I'm loving a lot of the stuff that he's talking about, though. First of all, a sense of this world. Like, everybody talking so quickly. It's very true about New Yorkers, and I'm really curious to see what that additional 7 minutes would do for the pilot if they do end up releasing it. That would be absolutely crazy. And also, the one person being on their way out, we've speculated all season long that it's Vince. So, what do you guys think? Does it sound like that could be him for now, or what do you think?
Well, when he said we've been kind of threading in little hints throughout the season, my first initial thought was PD Mac. And the only reason I thought of that was because of the whole suit thing, where they kept that's the one standout point or standout interaction between the guys and him that I can remember them really kind of, calling him out and stuff. But I feel like if we go back and watch, now that we have that hint, maybe there's something else that we missed. Just because I feel like Vince, again, like I said before with Charlie and the fortune thing, I think the Vince being the one on the way out is a low-hanging fruit too. I think that they're trying to make us think that that's what's happening, but I don't think he's going to be the one that's out.
I think the fun is more in the fact that it should have been Vince. It probably is Vince, but now we're just like us. They, in their own minds, are speculating. So until you have that answer of is it me or is it not, now all of a sudden you start questioning your own self of like
Charlie's doing right now.
Yeah, exactly, and you now will start to make stupider decisions.
That's the problem. They're all making rash moves because they think they might be the one. The only one who isn't questioning his place is Terry.
Yeah.
So that will be really, really interesting to see. I can't wait, and I can't wait to find out about the episode.
I think we have Ed back. Edward.
Hey guys, I'm back.
Oh, great. We just were going over. That's okay. We're just going over some of the amazing tidbits that you've given us and anticipating who is going to be the person who's on their way out the door. We have our own predictions based on the fact that you said that you've been dropping hints all season. I think that it's Vince, and you guys are thinking that it might be Charlie and other people. I mean,
I thought once you said that, my initial thought was that it's PD Mac, and the only reason I thought that was because the first thing that popped into my mind was the whole kind of busting him for having the cheap suits, and they always kind of are giving him crap. I don't know if you can even hint at if I'm close or if I'm very far away from what might happen.
I wish we could see his face so we could read it.
All I'll say is this: is that in the first episode, or I guess it would be the second episode of season 2, Johansson, the captain, brings me and Lieutenant King together and wants our opinions on who should go. And I'll say, of those 3 names that you mentioned, 2 of them are names that are discussed in that powwow.
Interesting.
Well, I can't picture Terry throwing Charlie under the bus. Just saying, he's had a problem with the way that everything's been handled with Moose. So, I could really picture. I think I got this one. You might have it too, Christina.
I hope so.
It's tough to tell. It really is. And I think that's what makes a great show, the fact that there are so many different options and storylines. You mentioned the fact that you wrote an 11th episode and that we didn't really get to see much of the Bernadette Moose storyline. Was that in the 11th episode or season 2, episode 1?
Yeah, season 2. Well, yeah, no. So Bernadette and Moose and what happens there, and she has that. And I think you guys even predicted it when she said Moose or Vince says to her, "So what? You want to be a gangster?" And she says, "Until something better comes along." That's kind of where we go with her in season 2. She goes to her uncle and she says, "Look, I don't know why you place so much faith in Sergio. He's an idiot. Why not give me a little room here?" So she'll have a lot to do next season. But that 11th episode really it goes deeper into the Sean and Deirdre situation, and what's going to happen with those guys. It also has a giant sort of 9-minute flashback that shows you what happened in the bar the night with Mr. O, Rusty, and the two hookers, and why Rusty wanted to kill Mr. O. And you guys called that very early. You guys got the reason for why he did what he did.
Well, you dropped amazing hints about it. I can't believe we're going to get a 9-minute flashback if we get a season 2,
Yeah.
which I'm hoping that we do. But is that something we can expect to see more of? Flashbacks isn't really a territory that we've ventured into too much so far.
I quite honestly, I don't know. You know, when we shot it, I loved it, and I thought, oh, this is fun. Maybe I should incorporate more of this. And what it would allow me to do is, I thought it might be fun to explore, you know, what was the relationship like between Tim Hutton, Kevin Corrigan, and Aaron Dean Eisenberg's character, Kane.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you guys were like, well, which one is his best friend? And what was sort of the hierarchy or the relationship between Mr. O, Corrigan, and Aaron's character? So I thought, and that was one of those things where I thought, oh, you know, actually that might be something interesting for me to explore through flashback. And then also I thought it would be interesting to take a look at, you know, what was the relationship like between Kay and Mr. O. That said, through those first 5 episodes, I haven't written any flashbacks yet. So
I think those could all be
I can't say.
They could all be very interesting, but one of the storylines and what exactly happened in the past that I'm curious about is with the Duffys, and with Father Duffy, and we learn a little bit about that. I'm extremely invested in Deirdre's character, and I noticed that she had some similarities to an early film that you made, your first, Brothers McMullen. She kind of reminded me of your character, as she's so non-committal and not interested in tying the knot as you weren't at first. Is there any, did you draw from your character at all in creating hers?
I didn't, but, you know, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, clearly is sort of working in your subconscious mind, because even the idea, as you say that, you know, Deirdre wants to be a writer. You know, she's going to be put in a situation where potentially, you know, her relationship gets in the way of her pursuing that dream, which I think is something that my character dealt with in Brothers McMullen. Mm-hmm. So clearly, you know, that's something at work with me. But yeah, I mean, Deirdre, O'Bannon, and Duffy have a lot to do in season 2. And Keith Nobbs, who plays Duffy, there's a perfect example of a guy who came into audition, was so great. That part of Duffy wasn't was sort of just a small part originally, and just because I loved Keith so much and what he was doing, I kept giving him more and more stuff to do. And then that final scene he has with Deirdre, where he comforts her on the couch. There was a whole other side to his acting that I hadn't seen before. So Keith gets a lot more to do in season 2. Basically, Deirdre comes to my character and says, "Hey, I hate to ask you the favor, but would you mind seeing if you could help out my brother?" And I won't tell you how he does that, but Muldoon does a little something to hopefully get Duffy on a different path.
Let me ask you this: as we expand into, you know, more of this stuff, will you be comfortable with others writing and directing some of these episodes? Because I mean, you're certainly ambitious in that way, and you know. But I wanted to ask, like, are you ever going to kind of relinquish at least a little bit in that regard? Like, let's say Steven Spielberg wanted to direct an episode. Ooh.
If Steven did, absolutely. Anybody else, no.
I think that's fair.
And the reason is, you know, I love it too much. You know, I mean, this story, the idea of a period cop movie and a Hell's Kitchen gangster story, are 2 different passion projects that I tried to get different versions of these made over the years as feature films, and for a number of different reasons couldn't get either project made. So when we got the green light on this, there were conversations about, well, what about hiring some writers and doing a writer's room? Just for very selfish reasons, like I didn't want to share it. I knew that the workload would not be. I knew that I could handle the workload because I love writing. It's never been torturous for me. I have some friends who are novelists, who write crime novels, and they knock out a crime novel once a year. My buddy isn't John Grisham, but you look at John Grisham or guys like that, it's one a year, and I was like, I can write a novel a year. I mean, I have that work ethic, so I looked at those 10 episodes and I wrote it the same way you would sit down and write a novel. And I imagined each episode ending the same way you would end a chapter. And that was kind of my approach from the writing. And fortunately for me, I had enough time. I had almost 5 months to get those 10 episodes done. So by the time we went into production, I was no longer writing. Everything was done. I might do some rewriting. I might write an additional scene or cut a scene and come up with something else to replace it. But for the most part, the 10 episodes were done. So then, when it came time to decide whether or not I would direct all of them, again, it's coming from the indie film world and especially the micro budget film world. It's very difficult to get those movies made, and a lot of times you're doing 12 different jobs. Like you're setting up lights and you're loading the camera and the equipment into the van. So you're so much of your day is spent doing things other than actually directing and making your movie. So that when I finally got the opportunity to have a budget, have all the toys at my disposal, and we were able to cast, these incredible actors, just for very selfish reasons, I did not want to stand on the sidelines.
I don't think that's selfish at all. I don't think it's selfish at all. I think that we would be devastated if you did stand on the sidelines. I think that this is one man's very clear vision, which is why the show is so incredible and successful. Because you have written every episode and you are the creator and the director and the star of the show, this show knows exactly what it's doing. And there's no confusion about that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that you talk about the fact that you think that you've almost been in pre-production for the show for 20 years, because this is not a new concept to you. This is something you've been working on for a really long time.
I think it has to be. I mean, this is unprecedented to my knowledge. I mean, Vince Gilligan with Breaking Bad, he didn't write every single episode. And he certainly didn't star in any episodes. You know what I mean? I can't. I mean, unless I'm absolutely mistaken, this is definitely unprecedented.
All right. It's not selfish. And what I did want to get from you, though, is because you are so involved in this, because it seems like a story not only that you want to tell, but that you need to tell. Where does that need come from? Or am I mistaken?
No, it does. I mean, a big part of it is, like I said, or you even just said, 20 years of being in pre-production, all of those unproduced screenplays. And with any of those screenplays, I did so much research. And, I'm a little bit of a New York City history buff. My family, my grandparents came from Hell's Kitchen, so I became a bit of a Hell's Kitchen history buff and the Irish sort of history in Hell's Kitchen. And given that my dad was a cop and I come from a cop family, I've always been like an NYPD buff. So I, just for fun, like my, the reading I like to do is, a lot of nonfiction that has to do with New York City, its neighborhoods, and, cops and gangsters. And, and then also a lot of fiction that relates to, those types of characters and sort of that New York City mythology and folklore. So these are the things that, are just my obsessions. Scorsese has a great line about, the job of the filmmaker is to make your obsessions, to make the audience as obsessed with your obsessions as you are. So it makes the writing, easy in a way because it's something that's fun for you. You're just so passionate about it. So, that need to tell the story probably just comes from these are the things that obsess me and that interest me. Case in point, today I'm walking home from a lunch meeting I had, and I go past the old police headquarters, which is over on Center Street in New York. And, now it's been turned into condos, but I walked past the backside of it, and that's where they used to, when someone got arrested, that's where they brought them down to first get, fingerprinted and booked. So, of course, I'm looking at that, thinking about next season, and, I've got to work this building into season 2 because it still looks the same. So, that's, you walk, I live here, you walk around the city, there isn't a street corner or a block that doesn't trigger some thought that is somehow connected to this story.
So, as you said, your father was a cop. Did you grow up wanting to be a cop, or were you always a writer?
No, always a writer. My dad kind of, I showed some ability as a young kid, and he definitely pushed me in that direction. And my mom was like a theater buff, so would take me into the city to see Broadway shows, and then later turned me on to movies. And so we definitely, we grew up surrounded by cops, and definitely sort of obsessed with, cops and their stories. But I always knew, I kind of knew at an early age, it might be more fun to write about them than actually be a cop.
I think that's fair enough. And I love your obsession because it has totally made us obsessed to the point where we'll be sitting in a room and we'll be talking about how upset we are over some of the decisions that these characters have made. I.e. Christina, we were just talking about what Sean did when Deirdre called him. I mean, what kind of a move is that from him? We weren't expecting that. Are we going to see more of him just rejecting her, or is that story is he gonna feel bad? Where are we going with that?
Well, so that scene, it's like, the last time they were really together, right? She said, "Hey, look, don't run out and get a ring anytime soon." Mm-hmm. And then he shows up to her apartment after he's had the shooting, and she's got some other dude up in the room. So that's where we've left him. So when she calls, he's like, "Look, you told me, you didn't want anything serious, so I'm not taking your call." He doesn't know what we know. So I felt like his reaction, was justified, but also at the same point, it's like, it wouldn't even matter if it's justified, because really what you're trying to do is just create, real characters who are complicated and complex, and a lot of times that, they're making the worst decisions, like any of us do. But to answer the second part of your question, in that 11th episode, she shows up at his apartment and basically says, "Hey, you can't avoid me. We need to talk." And they go out, and then she explains to him what's going on.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now, you keep bringing up this 11th episode. I really just want to see it now. I don't know if we can wait.
I think that's his goal.
I know, but I always get so frustrated when I fall in love with shows and then I have to wait forever to see the next season. So thank you for sharing all the little tidbits with us.
Yeah, no, of course. And we all feel like that is the best episode of the season. So in a weird way, it would have been a great finish, but it's also very exciting to know that we have that good an episode to open up season 2.
Does that episode help us help ease our worries about which characters we can trust and who we can't? Because as you know, on our after show, we're constantly talking about, do we trust this person? Is this person a plant? What are you doing here, Shay?
I just want to know. Yeah, I just want to know about O'Shea.
You just want to know Shay,
No, and you won't. Part of the fun is, unlike a movie, where you have 2 hours to tell the story, you can have a character that is somewhat sort of ambiguous or plays in that gray space, but eventually at some point, the hero has to answer the call and become the hero. With this kind of storytelling, and again, I'm new to this, and a lot of I'm basing this on what I've responded to as a viewer. of the shows, these long form shows that I've fallen in love with. I like the fact that, like, who is Terry? Is Terry the guy he is at home? And is that his moral code? Sort of the lessons he's giving James and then sort of the law he lays down there? Or is Terry the guy on the street? And how he deals with, the gangsters and other cops? So is he playing a role at home, or is he playing a role on the street? And I think that's a fun thing to play with, and maybe I don't ever have to answer that question, or maybe I don't answer that question until season 4. Shay, you'll see sort of who he is by the end of season 2. But again, we're going to draw that out as long as we can, because there's a lot of fun in sort of defying the audience's expectations and not making it easy. I mean, I think that's it's funny when I was writing the show, I was watching season 1 of Game of Thrones, and one of the things that happened because of that was the show became much more of an ensemble than I probably initially anticipated. I told you I had that big Bible of all these different stories and characters that I knew I wanted to eventually explore.
Right.
But when I saw, with Game of Thrones, how many different storylines and how many different characters they introduced, and the fact that, that character we met in episode 2, we may not see him again until episode 5. That really sort of shaped sort of my approach to the storytelling.
The reason it works is because they each have their own identity. Sorry. They each have their own identity. But I just think you didn't introduce too many characters. It's great that you followed from Game of Thrones. All of your characters are completely different from one another, so that it works for this show. Whatever your thought process was, however you got there, it totally worked.
Yeah, which is why I think it's like now that the season is over, I have to admit I'm excited for people to sort of rewatch it, or the people who haven't seen it, like who get to see it on iTunes, because then you like when you're introducing, let's say like a character like Rosemary, if you were to watch those 10 episodes over the course of, let's say, a week, I think Rosemary might feel like a very different character to you than watching it over 10 weeks, because you meet her once, you don't see her again for almost 5 weeks. Over the course of 3 nights, you get a different sense, I think, of who she is, because she hasn't been out of your life for so long. And I think that's true of a lot of those, let's say, those secondary characters that we've met.
I wonder when you're thinking about, when you're writing these, is that come into your mind then? Is that something you have to constantly be thinking about, how it's going to differ for people who are watching in real time versus people who are watching as a binge watch experience?
I wrote it thinking that most people would see it as a binge watch. That's kind of because that's how I watch television. I don't watch any live or appointment viewing or live TV. I mean, I DVR shows, and then when the season's done, then I just try and knock it off in 3 or 4 nights. But I do think going into season 2, I probably need to be mindful of that audience that doesn't watch the show that way. Again, how to do that, I couldn't give you an answer, but I definitely know I'll probably be more sort of, aware that there are folks who given that we're on TNT, are probably watching it week to week.
Yeah, you're torturous to us. You can't do that.
I think that we can withstand the torture. I think we can do it. Something we talked about a little earlier, your dad being a cop. I can't help but sometimes watch this show and picture you as little Ed Burns, and you being like a James or one of your son's characters, and having a cop as a dad, Terry. How much of this is pulled from your real experiences, your real life, and how much of it is just something that you've been creating from watching other things?
Yeah, I mean, the only autobiographical stuff is the stuff between Terry and James. That first scene in the pilot where he gets in trouble with the nun, and I have him in the car, and I call him a school fool, and I tell him how proud I am that he's an idiot. That's me and my dad, word for word, when I'm in the 7th grade. So that, that's absolutely, my childhood. But also, the talk at the end of the night where it's like, hey, sorry, I'm tough on you, but you are an idiot and you need to make a choice. You're going to continue to behave that way, or you're going to go the other way. So, those little things like that, the bad report card and getting drunk and those things. Those are all sort of versions of moments that, me and my brother shared with my father.
Wow. It's really interesting to think about in the future. When I'm watching this, I'm going to wonder which conversations happened and which conversations are coming from your real life. Wow. Anyway.
So some are word for word and some we play with and embellish,
Well, yeah, we'll give you that creative liberty. You're allowed to embellish. It is television, but it's nice to know that it is grounded in some sense and that these things are actually happening. I just really want to thank you for calling in and for providing us with a show that not only was entertaining, but was just such an amazing experience week after week to watch. I'm not only going to be watching every single week when it comes back, but I'll also be binge watching until it is here. So thank you for doing that for us. I really appreciate it.
Nice. Well, guys, given that you guys do your predictions and all that, allow me to ask you a question. So you guys clearly know the world and the characters very well. Who do you, as I sort of think about season 2, who are you most excited about learning more about, or getting more screen time, or going deeper with them? And then the second part is what would you say you want more of? Hey, I love the show, but if you gave me more Christine and what her life, which is something I'm going to do, it's who is she, who are her friends, what are her family, what is she thinking about more of the time? I'm curious as to what your wishes are.
Christina, what are you thinking?
Well, I really love, first of all, we loved Aaron. We had him on. He was great. And I love Kane. I love that character. But I would be interested to know a little bit more about, speaking of flashbacks, maybe another flashback to what Kane's life growing up, and maybe where I know that Mr. O kind of took him under his wing as a younger guy, but maybe some other things that he's a crazy guy, not quite as homicidal and as Rusty, but it would be nice to see maybe a little bit more about Kane, just his past and what brought him here, and
why he's back at Sarah's.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Season 2, Kane and Sarah have kind of a thing.
I kind of felt it coming.
Yeah,
I felt that coming.
Yeah,
oh, that's a little scummy.
And it's funny, you guys had that comment that you weren't feeling Hopkins and Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, I was like, that scene in the barn should have been Kane and Sarah, and maybe Kane coming on to her, and how, as opposed to spending so much time with her and Hopkins that late into the season.
Interesting. Mine would be Sean, because he's from Beantown, number one.
Oh, Phil's obsessed with Sean.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'll take it a little bit deeper than that. Here's a guy who lost a father, relatively the same age that I lost my father, and not only that, he ends up killing someone with his uncle, and he does it in a way that obviously puts them at harm, and so he could have died. And now he's also dealing with this relationship, or non-existent relationship at the moment. So he's dealing with a lot, and we were going strong with him, and then up until the finale, I don't remember moments that we see a lot of him.
Yeah, it's a good point. I love that storyline too.
Yeah, you do get Sean has more to do in season 2, and he and Kane actually have some an ongoing beef. When Aaron was on, he talked about a scene that got cut out, the one scene that got cut out of his. And that was a scene where he and Sean almost come to blows in a bar because Kane says something to Dee. And remember, they all grew up together in Hell's Kitchen. So that we'll play with a little bit more of in season 2.
I can't wait to see that. And Ed, to answer your question about which storylines, there's not a single storyline that I don't want to see more of, and that's not me BSing you. I honestly am. I just feel very invested in these characters, whether it is the captain or the lieutenant or all of the people who are on the force and people who are involved in the crime. I'm really interested in the stories that you guys mentioned, but the one that I think I'm looking forward to the absolute most is what's going to happen with Christine and the kids and you, because this is a family dynamic. You're potentially moving out of the city. She's looking out for her children, realizing that's the most important thing, and you have this pull to the city, and you've kind of been lying to her, and you're kind of telling her the truth. So that family, that's our core. I can't wait to see what happens there. And I don't even have any predictions on it. That's the coolest part for me.
And for me, I also want to add, I find it interesting with the lieutenant. Number one, Ruben has been here a couple times on AfterBuzz TV, and so selfishly, I like when he's on TV. So I always want more scenes for him. And then obviously him as a black character in this world, and the fact that we haven't quite touched upon that. A lot of fans are writing about that, like, what is that experience like? And I think
finally mentioned when he says it in the finale, talking about I was appreciative of that too.
Yeah, and I think that would be of interest. I know of to a lot of fans.
But also what it's like to be a woman at the time, and that's why I love watching the Christine and the Deirdre storyline. What it's like and the differences between now and then. So I think it's safe to say that we're fully invested. We're down for this ride, and there is not a character we don't want to see more of. Keep them all. Are we allowed to do that, or do we have to kill more people off? Our hearts
we
broken?
do. Yeah, I mean,
you gotta kill
some new guys will be introduced, and then some others will be killed off. That's sort of the nature of the show.
Oh yeah. More killed than introduced, though.
Yeah, that's true.
What's that?
I think there's more that are killed than introduced.
Well, we had to pare down that big ensemble we started with.
True.
Oh, well, I think that we'll be okay. There's a lot of them that we can kill off. We'll still have plenty of them to talk about every single week. Ed, thank you so much again for calling in. I know the people are going to want to keep the conversation going with you until there is an inevitable season 2. So where can the people find you in the meantime? Where can they talk to you?
So Twitter, it's Edward_Burns. And then on Instagram, it's Ed Burns.
Awesome. Well, we definitely will keep in touch because we can't wait to hear more, and for the final season 2 announcement, we're very excited for
And we're going to have Aaron set you up with Skype, so next time we can actually Skype instead of just calling.
He offered. He said he would come help you Skype. So thank you, Ed.
Next time, what we should have done, I was in LA a couple of weeks ago. We should have done it then, but next season I'll make sure I get out there to actually meet you guys.
It will be a ritual. You'll come in every season for the next 10 seasons. I hope you...
Perfect.
That's what we're hoping. All right, thank you, Ed, so much again. And you guys at home, don't forget that we are doing a finale for episode 9 and 10, the 2-hour finale with Brian, who plays Shay. We're really excited about that. That's tomorrow night. In the meantime, where can they reach you if they want to talk to you?
You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at Tina Cap. And for Anna Koppel, who's not here, you can find her at KOPPELFORMAYOR.
Koppel for mayor.
And follow us here at AfterBuzz TV, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget to support our great sponsor, DraftKings. Go to DraftKings.com. It's no commitment fantasy football. Use the promo code BUZZ, get in there, and potentially win up to $1 million every single week.
Absolutely, and you can find me at Roxy Stryer. I cannot believe we just got to talk to the Edward Burns, one of the best creators and stars of this time. He really was amazing. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you soon.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.